Okay. Good. So welcome everyone. We are doing this shir for Le'ilui Nishmas Tamara Bazdora. Tamara Bazdora. She have an Ilui for her neshama. And as usual, whenever we do a shir, so we do it as an advertisement as well for Shabbat.com, which is my website. So when you have the opportunity to invite guests for Shabbos, you don't want to miss out on that opportunity. So if you are not on it, you probably are on it already. But if you're not, go to www.Shabbat.com. It has been endorsed by the Gedolim as a tremendous way of doing chesed for Klal Yisrael. You can either sign up to be a host or a guest, and you can find the shidduch on the site as well. So that is Shabbat.com. So tonight we were going to speak about the topic, is it okay to doubt? And really what this topic is about is, how do I hold on to emunah? How do I hold on to my emunah? I love Hashem. I want to serve Hashem, but I'm having difficulty believing. Now, each generation has its test. And the test of this particular generation is fierce, because we live in a generation of doubters. People who doubt whether Hashem exists. And they don't just doubt, but they have a kli, they have the opportunity through the internet to espouse all their doubts. And even if you are a firm maimin, you firmly believe in Hashem, every time you read one of these doubters, even if you're reading it to know how to do battle with them, but every time you read it, there's another chink in your armor. It takes away a little bit of your excitement to stay Yiddish, to stay Jewish, to be excited, to listen to Hashem. And there's a danger. And eventually, you could have people who are still outwardly frum, but inside they're plagued with doubt. Could you believe that? Inside they're plagued with doubt. Now, in the olden days, there was a concept called emunah pshuta, which means simple faith. You believe in Hashem simply because your parents, your grandparents, you have the opportunity to say, I believe in you, Hashem, case closed. Today, emunah pshuta does not cut it for many people. They want to have something to grab onto when they do begin to doubt. And we also live in a day and age where at least half of those in political parties look at anyone who is religious like a moron, like a right-wing fanatic, like somebody who hates all sorts of groups with inhumanity, someone who causes war, violence, irrational, on and on. And we have to do battle with that and stay strong. How do we do that? Are you feeling what do you do to stay strong? In order to take this journey, we have to be introduced to the person who took us on this journey in the very first place. And his name was Avraham. Who was Avraham? Who was this man Avraham? His name used to be Avram, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu changed it to Avraham, which stands for Av Hamon Goyim. You will be a father to many nations. Now, anyone who even doubts Torah on any level, all they have to do is look at this prediction from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Avram, Av Hamon Goyim, the father of many nations, and then look today at more than half of the world, and the world's population has exploded. We are past 7 billion now. And to know that out of those 7 billion, at least half trace themselves back to Avraham. Christians do, Muslims do, and Jews do. So, without anything else, just look at the prediction, Av Hamon Goyim, that was in a Torah that was given 3,300 years ago. Imagine isolating the one person that everyone will trace themselves back to, and you already have a prediction that is highly implausible. Who was Avraham? A number of years ago, there was a National Geographic article, and the National Geographic, the title was, "Who was Abraham, father of many nations?" Wow, good question. And that was the cover of a National Geographic. Now, if you make it to the cover of National Geographic, that's pretty chashuv, right? Of course, they got it totally wrong. And rather than go into who was Avraham, what was his impact on the world, how did he have that impact on the world, instead, they went into his journey and where was Ur and what were the geographical parameters of his journey and the climate and the housing and all the things that essentially are irrelevant to explaining who was Avraham. But right now, right here, we're going to face this question, and hopefully, if you could really absorb the impact of what I'm about to say, it will blow you away. Avraham should be our greatest hero. Avraham should be, not just because he was willing to bring up Yitzchak on the Mizbeach, but who he was and how he changed the world in such a dramatic way, it should shake us up. So who was this man Avraham? And why would the world look totally different without Avraham? If Avraham had never existed, why would the world look totally different? So we have to go back in history and understand the dilemma of ancient man. Ancient man looked around at the world and tried to figure out what's going on. Who is running this show? What's his motivation? An ancient man was very confused because he looked around and he saw powers that affected humanity that were far greater than powers that the average person has. For example, fire, hurricanes, tornadoes, plague, earthquakes. Look at this power. Look at this terrible power out there. Who runs this world? So man tried to figure out who is the creator or creators. And what made it even more confusing to ancient man is the fact that when you look at this world, it gives you a mixed message. On one hand, you see beauty, harmony, scenery, pineapples, watermelons, waterfalls, sunsets, Cancun, beautiful beaches, gorgeous weather, the birds singing, harmony. So you say, wow, whoever created this world must have been very benevolent, must have loved people and wanted to give them something magnificent. On the other hand, they looked around, they say, hey, 1 second. What's death and destruction and plague and sickness and earthquakes and hurricanes doing together with pineapples, watermelons, and rainbows? I don't get it. The one who made the world, did he want to harm us? Or did he want to help us? Did he want to benefit us? Or did he want to torture us? What's the nature of the one who made this world? Is that a logical question? If you're an ancient person looking around, trying to figure out the nature of the world, is that a logical question? Beauty and death. So ancient man, when they tried to philosophize, what is going on, they came up with the following answer. It must be that there are many gods. And each god has their own nature. Each god has their own personality. Some gods are lovely. Some gods are love. Cupid, Aphrodite. Some gods are very mean and vicious. Some are powerful. Some play with mankind. It's a whole kingdom of gods out there. And maybe amongst the gods, there are the kings of the gods. And that explains the answer, that is the answer to this very difficult question. The question is, what's going on in the world? Why are there so many different personalities? Why are there so many different natures? Why are there so many different messages? And the answer is simple, because there are different messengers. Some are nice and some are mean. Okay? Ancient man had it solved. And ancient man was willing to live for thousands of years with that solution. There are many gods, and that's the answer. Now, and we know that the Greeks and the Romans all believed this. And they lived with this. And we even know fables like Aesop's fable, you know, when the wind is fighting with the sun, and they want to know, right? They're fighting with each other. There's one downside to this solution. And it's not what you may think. What's the downside of having a kingdom of gods? The downside is, who are we then? Are you a god? You're a god? You got any gods here? So if we're not gods, so then what are we? We're humans. Sort of like horses. A little bit like dogs. Maybe like apes. We're a little more sophisticated. But in a kingdom of gods, where there's superpower, and superpowers are the norm, human beings like you and I, we're like sophisticated weasels. Right? That's what we are. That's all we are. We're sophisticated animals. Now, what's the downside to being a sophisticated animal? The downside is that what we do is irrelevant. What we say is irrelevant. What we think is irrelevant. If there is a kingdom of gods, and that is what we consider to be the main kingdom in the world, and these gods have the nature of humans, they love and they hate, and they kill and they steal and they get jealous, and there's this God kingdom, then you and I, we have no powers, we don't even know what we're eating for breakfast tomorrow, and after we eat for breakfast, a few hours later, we're hungry for lunch, and we have no powers and we can't control anything. We can't make an earthquake, we can't control the rain. So we're just sophisticated animals. In a world of God, in a world of gods, that human beings have very little relevance. And when we have little relevance, then our actions have little relevance. And therefore, in a world of gods, humans are barbaric. Because who really cares? Who really cares? When you look down and you see two ants fighting, if there could be such a thing. I guess ants fight, right? Do you scream for justice? No, you step on both of them, right? Don't fight? Okay, now you see what happens, right? Now you're both dead, right? It's irrelevant. It's meaningless. In a world of gods, animals have no relevance. Think of it like this. If you've ever seen a superhero movie, a Superman, Spider-Man. So, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. We used to watch superheroes. I loved superheroes. I used to have comic books when I was a kid. Superman, Spider-Man. And the movies all end the same way. They're called formulaic. They're formulas. The movie is a formula. And the formula of each movie is the same. The last 10 minutes is the battle royale. The final battle at the end of the movie, and usually that battle takes place on the skyscrapers, right? Right? It's never on the ground. They're never punching on the ground. It's always like very high that if someone falls, they're going to smash to the ground. And they're punching each other. At first, the superhero is winning, and then all of a sudden, the villain comes, and the villain destroys the superhero, and the superhero is almost dead. And you think, oh no, Superman's going to die. But you know he's not going to, because they would never let you leave the movie theater with Superman dead. So somehow, either last minute he regains his power, or very often a mortal comes and saves the superhero, which is a lesson that, we're also a little significant, right? That's how it ends. Now let me ask you a question. In this movie, when they're fighting each other and they're smashing each other into skyscrapers, what you will notice is big chunks of the skyscraper get knocked off and fall 80 floors to the ground. Many, many hundreds of feet. Big chunks, weighing tons. Let me ask you something. Did anyone ever get hit on the bottom, on the ground? How could that be? No one ever got hit. You've got these huge chunks of skyscrapers coming to the ground. Nobody got hit. And we know it hit it because in every movie, when a chunk goes down to the ground, it always suddenly you have the car alarm. Falls down, woo, woo, woo. Like, okay, I know it hit the ground because that's the simon, the car alarm. It hit it and the car alarm went off. It never destroys the car alarm. It just destroys the car and the car alarm is saved. Just to show you, right? What happens to the people? Did none of the people ever die? The answer is simple. It's irrelevant. If a few people have to die to save a superhero, to save a god, then that's called collateral damage. I don't really care. As long as Spider-Man is saved, everyone else can fall off the bridge. I don't care. When superheroes battle, mortals, humans are irrelevant. And when we are irrelevant, what ends up happening is we become brutal and vicious. Comes along Avram, and Avram says, mankind, you got it all wrong. There are not many gods, some who love you, some who hate you, some who are mean, some who are kind, and they're doing battle with each other. There's one God. And that one God has a grand plan for mankind. And you are the purpose of creation. You are what it's all about. You are not a subspecies. You're not a sophisticated weasel. You are it. You're the reason that I made the universe. And therefore, everything that you do, say, and even think matters a great deal. What Avraham did is he lifted mankind from being a barbaric animal that used to sacrifice a child just because I want to make sure that the gods don't get angry. Okay, don't destroy me. Here's my firstborn. Don't destroy me. Here's my secondborn. Don't destroy me. Here's my wife. Don't kill me. Give us crops. Instead Hashem said, you are the purpose of creation. And everything that you say and think and do matters. And that's the message of Torah. The message is that speaking Lashon Hara is very destructive. Saying a lie is wrong. Being jealous, lo sachmod, being jealous is by itself something that is harmful to my universe. If we were just sophisticated weasels, does it make sense? You ant, don't be jealous of the other ants. You'll get your grain. Wait, you'll get your grain. It's meaningless. But now that we are the purpose of creation. So what Avram did was he lifted mankind up and gave us back our dignity. And that changed civilization forever and ever. That is the gift of Avram, and it's the gift of the Jewish people. The world would look dramatically different if the world was still polytheistic. And it is a fact, some people don't like hearing this, but it is a fact that nations and cultures and civilizations that are still polytheistic are patently more barbaric, more bloodthirsty, more ruthless than monotheistic religions. Because when you believe in one God, that makes you the center of the universe. When you believe in many gods, you're no longer the center of the universe. And therefore, you could have many wives and treat them all like dirt, because why not? And then you can go to you can go to another tribe and chop off their heads and shrink them and hold them on sticks and pull them up, because why not? We're just animals. But now we have our dignity. And that was the gift of Avram. Now the question is, why didn't Avram doubt? What was it that Avram saw that got him so excited and so inspired? I want to tell you a story. When I was about 17, maybe 16, maybe 17, I was in yeshiva, and I was on my way to Manhattan to go to Brooklyn. Now, I went to Staten Island Yeshiva, which really should be just a half an hour drive from Staten Island to Brooklyn. But if you didn't have a car, it meant going on the train from Staten Island to the ferry. That was a half an hour. The ferry, another half an hour. To the subway to Brooklyn, another hour at least. So you're talking two and a half, and then you got to walk wherever you got to get to once you're in Brooklyn. So you're talking about 2.5 hours, which should have taken a half an hour. But we try to use our time wisely. Often I would bring a Gemara. Sometimes I didn't. But once I was on the train, and I saw this boyfriend-girlfriend sitting across the aisle from me, and I decided to have a little bit of fun with them at their expense. So I see them, and one of them, the man, the boy, whatever, he was a teenager, possibly older, he has a paper bag. And in the middle of speaking to his girlfriend, he puts his hand into the paper bag, takes a bite of an apple, and puts it back in the paper bag like in one motion, without even hesitating, without stopping. Like in the middle of speaking, he goes like that. So I look at both of them, I say, wow. So the fellow says, excuse me, well, is everything okay? I said, yeah, I can't believe that you did that. I've never seen that. He says, you've never seen what? I mean, I said, I've never seen a person like put their hand in just like that and put it into the apple, and it was just amazing. So they're looking at each other, then they're looking at me, and they say, I don't get it. What do you do? I said, no, nothing, but just like when I take an apple, like I have to speak to it. So they look at me, they say, you have conversation with your produce? Like, what do you say to your apple? I say, different things, depending on which apple it is, whether I know it or not. But sometimes I'll look at the apple and I'll say, you know what? You're sort of weird because you're red, most of you, but then the bottom or like little side of it is green. What's up with that? You messed up. You messed up. You're supposed to be red. You got a little green. So then the apple answers back, and they look at me like, your apple speaks back? It sure definitely does. I'm not going to speak to myself. I'm not crazy. So the apple says back, I actually used to be totally green. I said, you did? What happened? The apple said, oh, you don't understand. You see, when I was first born, when I first sprouted, I wasn't ready to be eaten. And therefore, it's an apple that's not ready to be eaten. There's a great danger. And the danger is someone could pick me and eat me and get a stomachache because I'm not ready to be eaten yet. So what I do is I make myself green because the leaves around me are green. And this way I'm able to be camouflaged amongst the leaves. So the leaves are green, I'm green, no one's going to see me, no one's going to pick me, and then they won't get a stomachache by eating me. So I look at the apple, and then I have to say something back. I say to the apple, do you know what you're telling me? Do you understand what you're telling me? You are telling me that A, you know you're supposed to be eaten. How does an apple know that its purpose is to be eaten? And you know you're supposed to be eaten by beings that have eyes. How do you know that eyes exist? How does an apple know that such a thing called eyes exist? And you know that you're supposed to be eaten by beings that have eyes that can tell the difference between colors. How do you know, think about this, how do you know that I have eyes that can tell the difference between the color green and red? That's remarkable. And you know how to make yourself the color of the leaves around you, so you can manipulate your color. And you also must know what the color green is, because you see the leaves are green and you know how to make yourself green. And then when you're ready to be eaten, you change your color so that you can stick out. Oh, and you know all about my stomach juices, because how do you know that before you're ripe, my stomach can't digest you? So let me review. I mean, you are one brilliant apple, like Apple Einstein, you know? Think about it. A, you know you're supposed to be eaten. B, you know you're supposed to be eaten by beings that have eyes. You don't have eyes, but you know that I have eyes. And you know that my eyes can tell the difference between colors. How do you know? How do you even know that there is such a thing called color when you yourself don't have eyes? How does an apple know that there's such a thing called colors when it doesn't have eyes? But you know that I know about colors, and you know how to manipulate your colors so that it'll be camouflaged, but when you're ready to be eaten, you're not camouflaged. It's brilliant. Are you feeling me here? All of this is going on in an apple. So then the apple said, you don't even know a fraction of it. The apple says, think about this. Before I am ready to be eaten, if you were to bite me, A, you wouldn't even find me because I'll be camouflaged. But B, if you bite me, my texture will be very unpleasant. Have you ever tried to eat a raw apple? Something about it. It's crunchy, but too crunchy. Like, it's crunchy in the wrong way. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Because it's tough, and you want an apple to have a good bite, but after you bite it, then you want it to be a little soft on the inside. This is like hard to hold on. It's a bad kind of crunchy. So my texture is bad. My flavor is pretty much non-existent, and it exists. It's an unpleasingly sour taste. So the texture is not good. My fragrance is almost non-existent. And fragrance is critical, because when something smells good, it goes up into my nostrils and it activates my salivary glands, which helps me begin the digestive process. So when you're not ready to be eaten, you don't look good, you don't smell good, you don't taste good, you don't have a good texture, and you're bad for my stomach. But when you're ready to be eaten, when you're fully cooked, all of a sudden the following happens. All of a sudden, you look good, you're attractive, you're red, you catch my eye, you look good, you smell good, you taste good, you have a good texture, and you're good for me. All of the 5 senses, all of the 5 experiences that we have happen the same moment in every fruit. This is worth meditating on for hours, because anyone who is a kafir, anyone who doesn't believe, all they need to do is meditate on this. Now, an evolutionist may be watching this on Torah anytime, and they may say, no, I'll tell you exactly why that happens, because it's able to procreate better if it's eaten, and therefore it's better if it smells good, tastes good, because this way an animal is going to eat it and excrete it, and then it will be able to propagate, it will be able to proliferate, to grow, to be spread. But once again, you're attributing motive to a seed. You're attributing motive, the desire to propagate itself, to something that's pretty inanimate. I don't know if you caught what I was saying, but I know those who watch it who wanted to answer that. I just explained why I don't buy the evolution answer. What I do buy is that there's no reason that all 5 of these things, these 5 traits, these 5 benefits should happen simultaneously. For example, maybe it should smell good and have a good texture before it's ripe, and after it's ripe it should lose those 2, but it should gain the other 3. Understand? Why should all 5 be lacking when it's not ready to be eaten, and all 5 come and be present when it is ready to be eaten? Are you hearing me? It's brilliant. So I keep on eating this apple, and I'm enjoying it, and as I'm eating it, the juices bathe my tongue, and I say, wow, it's so sweet, I want to eat more. So the apple says, of course you want to eat more, because the sweetness makes the salivary glands begin to water, and your stomach is beginning to digest, and I've got roughage, and I help you go to the bathroom, and it's going to help you, and I've got vitamins and minerals, and I'm good for your teeth. Everything about it, the fragrance goes up to my nose, that cinnamony apple smell. It is the perfect food. And a good apple is the perfect food. Except that I get my phone call in the middle, so I put the apple down. And then when I pick up the apple 15 minutes later, after the phone call, what happens to the place where I just bit? Brown. It's brown. So I say to the apple, you messed up. I bit, you were all white, and now you're brown. So the apple says, I didn't mess up. You took off my wrapper. I say, you have a wrapper? I didn't see an wrapper. Yeah, it's an edible wrapper. You see, the red around it makes it edible. So it's an edible wrapper. I say, wow, I wish every chocolate bar had an edible wrapper. Would that be great? Just be able to eat the chocolate bar and the wrapper at the same time. Apples come with an edible wrapper. And I'm eating it, and I'm enjoying it, and it's a feast for the senses until I get it to the middle. And I bite down in the middle, and there's something like hard and black and tasteless, so I spit it out. And I say, you messed up. Part of you tastes like nothing. So the apple says, of course, that's my seed. If my seed would have a taste, what would happen to me as a species? I would become extinct, because you would all eat my seeds. And therefore, what must I do? I must have no taste. It must be hard to eat, something that you're not going to want, and you'll spit me out. And once you spit me out, I can take care of the rest. I got it all covered. You spit me out, I go into the ground, I got sunshine, I got rain, I got soil. That's all I need. I'm good to go. Nothing. And in the seed, you know what's in there? You've got DNA. This tiny little factory. And of course, the outside of the seed is food. Now, not food that you and I eat. Each seed comes equipped with its own amino acids, its own food. And that food is meant for the seed to nosh on until it's put into the ground. So it's got its own brain food. You put it into the ground, and it interacts with the water and the soil and the sunshine, and the DNA begins to spread. And from this tiny little seed, this tiny little factory, it begins to divide. Okay, man, let's go to it. Roots, right there. Bark, right there. Trunk, right there. Leaves, over there. Branches, nectar, sapling. Okay, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And from this tiny little seed, there's nothing, it's so small, smaller than your thumbnail, is a tree. A mighty tree. With thousands and thousands of apples inside, which each have little seeds with thousands of mighty trees in them. Did they ever make such a thing with all of our technology? You know what Avram saw? He opened his eyes and we don't need science, just look. Just look. We're in a designer world. We're in a designer universe. It's so amazing, it's so beautiful. These 5 things, just meditate on them. And you should know, it's not only in fruit which is ripe and not ripe. Within the very same fruit, you'll find the same pattern. Think of this. Think of a watermelon. The top of the watermelon, you eat a nice slice of watermelon, delicious, right? When you're about to bite into it, think all 5 things are there. It tastes good. Ooh, a good piece of watermelon's the best. It looks good, all red, watermelon color. It smells good, the fragrance, the texture of a good watermelon, the best, right? And it's good for you. And then you get near the bottom. And near the bottom is its protective shell. And its protective shell has to be protected, so it's not edible. So what happens, as you get closer and closer to the rind, to the peel, what do you begin to lose? All 5 gradually leave simultaneously at the same moment. At the same moment that you lose taste, you begin to lose smell, the texture begins to become tough, right? The appearance, it loses its redness, becomes white, and becomes less and less good for you. All 5 in the same fruit. It's amazing. You should daven tonight with so much kavanah. Design a world. You've got it. Hashem just makes it for us. It's like, we can't say this, but you just say Hashem is having a great time making this. Like each thing. Here my tire kindle. Oh, I'm going to make an orange full of juice because I want you to have orange juice also. And orange juice is so good, but I want you to enjoy an orange. But it's got to be full of juice. So if I make it one whole orange, sort of like an apple, when you try to cut it or bite into it, what would happen? Spritz. So what did Hashem do? Hashem already divided it into bite-sized pieces, just like mommies do for their kindle. They take off the peels. Hashem made the bite-sized pieces. Okay, this way it won't spritz on you, won't get you dirty. Here we go. Kindle, here we go. Here's a grapefruit. It's all very messy, but I'll already make it into bite-sized pieces for you. Designer world. I mean, look at the seeds. Just look at seeds. You know, seeds, there are certain seeds that are edible. For example, watermelon seeds. Do you know you can eat a watermelon seed? Do you know if you go to Israel, they sell pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, and watermelon seeds? Right? And people eat watermelon seeds. And because watermelon seeds are edible, there is that danger of extinction. So you know what Hashem, the designer of this amazing universe, has done? Well, he did a few things. Number one, he created them in abundance. So even if you gnash on them, there's going to be some that escape. But what else did he do to those seeds? You ever try to hold a watermelon seed? You put a little mucus on the outside. So you try to hold it. You ever do that as a kid? You take it, right? Right? That's on purpose. So when you try to grab it, some of them are going to slip out of your hands. That's on purpose. That's not an accident. Do you know there are certain fruits that have only one seed? Or if it has only one, we call it a pit, not a seed. It has only one. Now that fruit is in a lot of danger. It only has one. A peach, only one. A plum, only one. So what does Hashem do? Did you know that a peach pit, when you look at a peach pit, you're not looking at the pit. You're looking at the shell of the peach pit. The pit is actually inside. You ever seen it? It's on the inside. The outside is the shell. Now, if you ever looked at the shell of a peach, peach pit, you'll see it looks like two sides that are glued together. Right? Looks like that? And they are glued together. They are glued together with the strongest glue known to man. Yes, stronger than crazy glue. If you were to take a hammer and try to break open a peach pit, you know what would happen? You would break your window. Because you go boing and boom, it would go and it would break your window. You can't do it. There's only one thing on earth that can dissolve the glue that holds a peach pit together. You know what that is? Earth. Inside the earth, there are special enzymes that interact with that glue. You put it in, Baruch Hashem. It just nicely opens. Okay, I'm home. I'm ready to do my deeds. Design a world. And we're just touching the outside of fruit. We didn't go into the human body. We didn't go into the fact that we've got 4 different kinds of teeth, and each one is supposed to help the digestive system. So digestive systems like ours that can handle fruit, vegetables, and meat. So we are omnivores, right? We're carnivorous, and we're also able to eat fruits and vegetables, herbivores. So you know what? Hashem gives us 4 sets of teeth. The front teeth, they're called incisors and canines. Incisors and canines are meant for ripping meat because our bodies can digest it. The cuspids and bicuspids, or molars, right, the 2 and the 4, they're meant for grinding fruits and vegetables because our bodies can handle that. So depending on which animal and what it's able to eat, those are the teeth that it has. Now, let's give credit to evolution. Evolution is the one that did this, because evolution is a person. No, evolution is not a person, but evolution knows what it's doing. No, it has no intention, because it's a rule. It's not a being. Yes, but if you follow a rule, and the rule is consistent, so it's not chaotic, so what makes something that is random into something that's consistent, that follows rules? You see, you get stuck again and again. I always say Judaism is not against evolution. We're not. We never have been. We're only against random evolution. We're only against evolution that happens by itself. Did Hashem choose to make the world grow and prosper and change through something called evolution, whether it's survival of the fittest? Maybe. We have no problem with that. We have no problem. There's a Rashi that says that Hashem created in the very beginning the world. There's also a Zohar. Hashem made the world the size of a mustard seed and even smaller, infinitely dense, and in it was the power of the entire universe. And from that little dot came everything else, evolved, everything else came out. I got no problem with that. You have a problem with that? Is that against Torah? Hashem does not explain how He made it. The only being that Hashem explained how He made was Adam. That's the only being. And not only that, it doesn't even say that Adam was the first man. He was only the first man with a neshama. There could have been other men before, according to the Ramban. Right? We have no problem with it. But we look around at the world and we say, this world is so amazing. It screams to us. You know, the nose is on top of the mouth. The nose could have been anywhere. The very fact that it's on top of the mouth tells you that whoever created our face, whoever created us, did it with a purpose. If the nose is on top of the mouth, then we're able to smell the fragrance of the food, the aroma, before we eat it, which gets our salivary glands cooking, begins to get the digestive system moving. Do you know the nose can smell 1 part in 6 million? 1 part in 6 million? Little part of smoke in 6 million? Fire. I'm smelling fire. Coming from there. Smelling? No, I think it's coming from there. It's fascinating. Not only that, do you ever drink milk? You're about to drink a cup, and it was rancid and spoiled, like sour. You go like this. Oh, disgust, right? Your nose protected you. It's the gatekeeper of the mouth to make sure that you don't put into your mouth something that can harm you. You know, your tongue, it has the ability to taste many different tastes, depending which side of the tongue. And there are reasons why each part of the tongue is able to taste in a different way. You know, your eyebrows, among the many reasons that we have them, when we run and we sweat, if we didn't have eyebrows, it would drip right into our eyes and it would blind us. So if we had to run or we had to do hard work, within a few minutes we wouldn't be able to see. Instead, we have eyebrows, and the water, the sweat, goes into the eyebrows, and it's traced along the side of our face, keeping it out of the way of the eyes. Do you know that there are over 21 chemicals every time you blink that bathe the eye? 21. And you don't even realize that you're blinking because you blink so quickly in a blink. And you know what's amazing about that? Since seeing is so critical. When we drive at 65 miles an hour, we're going very fast. And if we have to go through a long process, time to clean the eyes. Crash. Baseball, time to clean the eyes. Boing, right? It would not be acceptable. So instead, Hashem allows us to bathe our eyes incrementally with 21 different chemicals that protect the eye. There's so much. So, whenever you begin to feel, I'm not sure, I hear naysayers, just think about your ears. Just think about your ears. My son played me something that he downloaded called Virtual Barbershop. Has anyone ever heard of that? You heard of it? Very, very worthwhile. You download it, called the Virtual Barbershop, and you're supposed to listen to it with earphones, with your eyes closed. And you listen to it, and you literally feel like you're getting a haircut. It is the weirdest. What? Yeah, it's a guy. Okay, and you hear the barber coming, and you hear him wheeling his chair, and they did it in such an astonishing way that you got to hear it. It'll freak you out, and you see the power of the ear, right? But not only that, but ready, everyone, close your eyes. Close your eyes. We're doing an exercise. Close your eyes. Okay, just point where my snap is coming from. Stop, put your hands down. Point, keep your eyes closed. Point where the snap is coming from. That's right. Stop. One more time. Point where it's coming from. Excellent. Do you know how important that is? You can open your eyes. You know how important that is when you're driving or when you're crossing the street and you're not sure where a car is coming from? You know how important it is, how many lives are saved? Or if a child is lost in the woods or in the grocery store? Where are you? It's coming from there. And you know how you're able to hear? Bose, the radio. They created something called the wave radio. I owned it. What is wave radio? It essentially allows sound to be magnified using waves. Well, guess who created the first Bose wave radio? This is a Bose wave radio. These little curves are not to make it look like a cherry Danish. That's not the point. They're really here to pick up different sounds. And inside is a tiny little hammer. And it allows me to, it allows me to balance so that I don't topple over. I know which way is up and which way is down. But you know what's really cool about the ears? I would think that in order for the ears to hear here or here, they'd have to be out, which would make it a big pain in the neck when I went to sleep on my side. So instead, Hashem makes them nice and cozy. So when I'm sleeping, that's sweet. And now it's out, and it's able to hear it's just bent just enough to pick up the sound, but it's still tucked in enough to not be sticking out, allow me to fall asleep. And the hair, of course, protects my head until I get older and I don't fall on my head so much and then I can get bald. And little children have baby teeth. You know why? Because they nurse. And when a child nurses, very often they fall asleep while they're nursing, and the sugar of the milk sits on the teeth and it rots the teeth. So could you imagine if we only had one set of teeth? By the age of 10, we'd all look like old men and old women. No more teeth. So instead, Hashem gives us training wheel teeth. And our faces grow bigger, so we have these new set of teeth. And teeth get the hardest workout, right? It's a bite all the time, and the pressure per square inch is enormous when you bite. And therefore, when you bite all your life, you're biting and biting and biting. It's terrifying how much pressure is on these teeth. So we have something called enamel. You hear about it in toothpaste commercials. Enamel, protect your enamel. Anyone here work in a dentist office? Always one person. I knew it was you. Right? Oh, you also do? Right? So I'm sure you can tell everyone over here that enamel is harder than diamond. The enamel that Hashem made, it's clear, you don't see it, but enamel is harder than diamond. The hardest substance known to man is enamel. And it's right there in your mouth, in your teeth. Designer world, again and again. I once had a student who became religious, and I said, what was it? Which one of my talks? Which was the Shabbos? I was joking with him. He's a rabbi. I love you very much, but it had nothing to do with you. I said, oh, okay, I can live with that. But what was it? He said, I'll tell you what it was. I was in medical school, and we spent a semester learning about blood. That did it for me. I said, blood? Blood is red. He says, Rabbi, learn about blood. Learn about T cells. Learn about white blood cells and red blood cells. Learn about what it's able to do and carry the vitamins and take away the waste and into the lungs and out to the heart. And learn about blood, and you will come to believe in the Almighty. Did evolution make blood in every animal? Not in a trillion years. Forget a billion years. Forget even less. Forget it. We live in a designer world. I'll finish with a story. When we doubt, what happens is we give up all that is precious to us, all that is dear to us. And we get very little in return. And eventually, we come back in a regret. And it's not because we're not thinking people, but there's a time in all of our lives that we have to engage and not look back. That happens in marriage. Could you imagine if you were in a marriage that every moment you were still doubting whether the person loved you? That would be a ridiculously sad marriage, wouldn't it? Where were you? It's already 9 o'clock. Where were you? What do you mean, where was? I'm not sure you really love me. We're married 22 years, but I'm still not sure. Right? Eventually, you have to say, I have seen enough. My belief threshold has been reached, and I'm ready to engage. And a Jew is allowed to say that without being called a moron or a blind follower or a religious fanatic. We each have our threshold. And our threshold, and Avram Avinu's threshold, was simply to look around the world. Someone once said to me, Rabbi, but why so many stars? They don't do anything for us. That bother anyone? Hashem made so many stars. It lights up the night, but only a small fraction of them. Do you know that you are made of stars? You are really made of stars. Because elements, according to science, where do elements come from? Well, after a star explodes, and this was again according to the Big Bang, which again we don't have an issue with, if that's how Hashem made the world. Hashem did not explain to us in Bereshit how He made it. But there are certainly explosions happening all the time in space. And when a star explodes, especially a very large star, what happens? Hydrogen and helium rush outwards. And as they rush, they smash into each other. And as they smash into each other, some of them end up sticking. And when they stick, they make heavier and heavier elements. So, with a world starting with hydrogen or helium, you would not be able to get gold, you wouldn't be able to get oxygen, and you wouldn't be able to get any of the elements that make up you and I. Except that the more stars we have, the more elements are pushed out, collide into each other and eventually comprise the universe. Now, did Hashem make it because of that? Maybe. That certainly is what happens. Do we understand it? Why did Hashem need to make Jupiter? What's the point of a Jupiter or a Saturn? Mazalos. What's the point? Do you know that without Jupiter there would be no Earth? Yeah, there'd be no Earth. You know why? Because there are meteorites that are flying out there, some of them that are as large as cities. If any of them would smash into Earth, Earth would be finished. Correct? So what happens? As they enter our solar system, there's this gigantic shield called Jupiter with a very strong gravitational pull. And as these meteorites pass through, they're attracted by Jupiter and they smash into Jupiter. And that alone is able to save Earth. That's why, pardon me, that's one of the reasons why people say, well, there must be many Earths out there, right? Because look at the laws of chance. No. If there was another Earth out there, even if it was exactly 93 million miles away from exactly the right kind of sun, with exactly the right kind of atmosphere and everything else that exists, you would still need a Jupiter to protect it. And the Jupiter would have to be exactly the right distance away so that it would be able to intercept it without being too far away and without being too close, so it wouldn't attract Earth, and then Earth would be pulled towards it. Fascinating stuff. So we end with the following story. Many years ago, in 1930, there was a town called Kazimierz. Kazimierz is a small town in Poland, and very few people lived in Kazimierz. It was like one of these fiddle-around-the-roof towns. 20 people lived there. That's it. But amongst those 20 people was a man by the name of Shalom Goldberg. And Shalom Goldberg desperately wanted a son. And so Hashem gave him 8 straight daughters. But he continued to daven, and number 9 did end up being a son. And he named him Chaim. He named him Chaim. He ended up with another son afterwards as well. Now, the father, Shalom Goldberg, lived in one of these small little houses, small little village houses, 2 rooms. One room was a bedroom for the parents, and the other room was a bedroom for the kids, and it was also the kitchen, and it was also the dining room, and in the corner of it was also a shoemaker shop, because he was a cobbler and he used to fix shoes. All of that in one small room. One day, walking through Kazimierz was a man by the name of Saul Steinberg. Saul Steinberg was a student of Sigmund Freud. He was part of the Haskalah movement. What is Haskalah? Haskalah is translated as the enlightened movement, the movement of enlightenment. We are enlightened. We no longer need Torah. We no longer need Judaism. We have been emancipated. We have been enlightened. We have been freed of the shackles and burdens of religion and Judaism. And Saul Steinberg decided to go around to different shtetls and document what he saw and make a book out of shtetls in Europe. He was going to write a book, a quaint little book about the dying shtetls. So his journey brought him to Kazimierz. And he's walking through the streets of Kazimierz, and all of a sudden, the sole of his shoe rips. So he asked the town people, do you have a shoemaker? They said, sure we do. Go to Shalom Goldberg. So he goes to Shalom Goldberg's house. And he says to Shalom, can you fix my shoe? Do you have that ability? And Shalom Goldberg says, sure, I'll be happy to. I'll do it right on the spot. Have a seat. So he sits down in the little hut that belonged to Shalom Goldberg and his many children. And as he's sitting waiting for his shoe to be fixed, He looks at the wall and he sees beautiful paintings, pictures done on paper, some on perhaps little canvases, thumbtacked onto the wall. And he turns to Shalom Goldberg and says, "Who made these? These are awesome. These are tremendous. Who made these? Where'd you get them from?" He said, "These are made by Chaim, my son Chaim." He said, "Your son made these? How old is he?" "He's 11. So Saul Steinberg said, "Your 11-year-old son made these paintings? I can't believe it. I must meet him." Well, he's out. He's a house painter, so he's painting a house today. If you want to wait for him to come back, he'll come back at the end of the day. Saul Steinberg said, "I'll be glad to wait." And he waited all day. At the end of the day, little Chaim comes home. He's got paint all over his clothing. And Saul Steinberg puts out his hand. "Shalom, my name is Saul. Are you Chaim?" He says, "Yes, I am." He says, "Can I ask you, did you really make these paintings on the wall?" He said, "I sure did." He said, "You're very talented. I have never been to a house where I encountered a child with your kind of talent." He said, "Can I see more of what you made? Do you have anything else?" And all night long, Saul Steinberg stayed up and went through the portfolio of little Chaim Goldberg. At the end of the evening, Saul said, "Listen, you don't belong in Casimir's. You got to come with me. I will bring you to Vienna. I will bring you to Paris. I'll bring you to the art houses. You'll become famous. You'll become wealthy. You've got amazing talent." "My father's never going to let me go. He needs me to paint the house." "Let me speak to your father. I will tell him what he has." So Saul Steinberg spoke to Shalom Goldberg and says, "Listen, your child is very talented. I could bring him to the best high schools, the art high schools. He could learn, he can grow, and he can really make a living. He can become famous." Now, Shalom Goldberg did not understand what Haskalah was. He didn't understand the Reform movement. He didn't understand what it means to leave the traditional Judaism. He didn't understand. All he knew was, this man is willing to take his son and go study art and perhaps make a living, a better life. So he let his son go with Saul Steinberg. And Saul Steinberg brings little Chaim Goldberg to Vienna, and he brings him to a high school for the gifted. Walks into the office, and Chaim's wearing tattered pants, tattered shirt. And Saul Steinberg says, "Please, I'd like to enroll this young man." "Really? No, this is really for the gifted." "No, but this young man, he's quite gifted." "No, but I'm serious. Bring him to, let him take art lessons. Let him try something. I want you to see what he can do." So after a lot of begging and cajoling, they gave little Chaim a piece of plaster, and they said, "Let's see what you could do." And in a few minutes, Chaim, with his bare hands, created a bust of one of his sisters, a face of one of his sisters. Beautiful, beautiful image. And they said, "Wow, that's amazing. We are going to give you a complete scholarship to our school." And he was enrolled in that school. Meanwhile, Saul takes the rest of the paintings and goes to France and shows the paintings to Marc Chagall. Now, Marc Chagall is perhaps the most famous painter in Jewish history. His paintings are worth millions of dollars. And he brings the paintings to Marc Chagall and says, "What do you think of this?" And Marc is looking page after page, and then he says, "Who made these paintings?" He says, someone by the name of Chaim Goldberg. He says, "He's a genius. He's amazing. Can I meet him?" Well, actually, he's 11 years old. Marc Chagall says, "This was made by an 11-year-old? And on the spot, Marc Chagall bought 52 of his pieces. He says, "One day, this person is going to be well known, and I want to own his pieces." What eventually ended up happening with Chaim Goldberg is he was enrolled in a university for top artists. He ended up during the war in Siberia, where he met a lady by the name of Hannah. They both survived the war. And Chaim Goldberg went on to become one of the greatest Jewish artists in history. His works hang in all of the most famous museums, the Met, the Hague, all over the Chaim Goldberg's work is displayed. Chaim Goldberg, and if you look in Wikipedia, you'll find lots and lots of information calling him the greatest shtetl artist, because he used to paint what he remembered from the shtetl, the greatest shtetl artist in history. 7 years ago, Chaim Goldberg passed on. This Hoshana Rabbah, a few months ago, I received a phone call. A man gets on the phone and says, "Hi, my name is Shalom Goldberg. I am the son of the late Chaim Goldberg. I understand that you have one of my father's paintings." I said, "Yes, I do. I would like to see it. A book is being published, and I personally want to see what my father made. I want to be able to see it. And I'm driving from upstate New York to Florida with my wife. Would it be okay if we stop by your home?" I said, "Certainly." Shalom Goldberg walks in. We schmooze for about a half an hour. A delightful person telling me about his father. And then in the middle I said, "Where's your wife? You said you're driving with your wife." "Oh, she's waiting in the car listening to the radio." I said, "It's really very hot. Why don't you tell her to come in?" And he says, "No, she only drinks one thing. She only drinks Diet Dr. Pepper Cherry." I said, "I happen to have an entire fridge full of Diet Dr. Pepper Cherry. It's one of my favorite sodas. Why don't you tell her to come in? I'll give her a nice cold soda." So he says, "Okay." So he goes to the car and he brings her in. Of course, I give her and him a soda. And then we schmooze a little bit. And then I tell him, "Look, it's Hoshana Rabbah. It's a very important day. It's like a little Yom Kippur. It's also the last day to shake lulav and esrog. Would you like to shake lulav and esrog?" So they said, "We don't know. We're not religious. We did not grow up religious." Remember, Chaim Goldberg became part of the Haskalah movement after his teacher Saul Steinberg. "We only go to synagogue on Yom Kippur." I said, "Yeah, but still it wouldn't hurt, if you'd like to." So she says, why don't we do it? Let's just do it. It'll be nice." So I give it to them. I show them the bracha, and they shake lulav and esrog. Then I tell them, "Look, we're about to eat our Hoshana Rabbah meal, and our Hoshana Rabbah meal is delicious cold cuts. We have corned beef and pastrami on Jewish rye bread with deli mustard." I'm getting you guys hungry, huh? So why don't you could enjoy some? So Shalom says, "No, we really got to get on the road." And she says, "No, that really sounds good, actually, the deli." So she prevailed, and they sat down, and they enjoyed a delicious lunch with us. Big, thick sandwiches full of cold cuts. Then I told them, "Listen, before you guys go, I have a neighbor who collects art. Why don't you go? I'm sure he'd like to meet you. Maybe you'll have a piece one day to sell him." So they said, "Sure." And they went to his house. They spent a few hours there, and then they came back to my house. I said, "Listen, you should know tonight is Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. Maybe you want to stay for the meal this evening, because we're having challah, gefilte fish, matzah ball soup, sweet and sour chicken, kreplach, knishes, coleslaw, kugel, anything with a K." Kasha varnish, because we got it all, right? "Why don't you stay?" So he says, "No, we really got to go." And she says, "No, that actually sounds pretty good." So she prevailed, and they stayed that evening. And we had a big Yontif meal. We had a lot of college students over, and we're making l'chaims, and they're really enjoying this Yontif meal. Near the end of the meal, we began singing. And we began singing the songs that I knew they would know. Like, even if you don't have a background, "Hey, Veinu Shalom Aleichem," and Shalom Bin Ramav. And then I get to some of the older classics that I knew none of the students would know, but they know. "Häufen Privileg, brennt a Feuer, und in Stub ist heiß." You know this? And the Rebbe learned mit kleiner Kinderlach. And they're singing, and they're just enjoying. They're enjoying it. And then I say, "It's Simchas Torah. We got to get up and dance." So we get up and we're dancing. And he looks at me while we're dancing, and he says, "The shtetl's not dead." I said, "No, it's not. It just moved to Muncie." So we're singing and we're dancing, and when we finished, it was getting late, I said, listen, let's have some cake and coffee. Because what did I want them to do? I want them to sleep over. So we have cake and coffee, we're schmoozing. It's 11:30 at night, and he says, thank you so much, we're going to be heading out. So I said, okay, so it was such an honor having you here, but I just want to throw something by you just in case you want. It's 11:30, we actually have an empty bedroom here. It's all set. Actually, I knew I was going to offer it to them. We already had a guest there. I asked the guest to move in the middle of the meal, so it was empty. I said, why don't you come? We have an empty bedroom, and you'll be able to... He goes, no, we got to get on the road. We're going to Florida. I said, where are you going to sleep? Oh, we'll stop at a Howard Johnson's. I said, it's 11:30. You're going to drive for a half an hour and then, and then stop and then spend $80. You may, if you want, you may as well sleep here. So he's saying, we really shouldn't. But she says, we could save $80. So she prevailed again. Strong Jewish woman. And they slept over. The next day, we had a minyan in the house. And a minyan in the house, so we're davening. We didn't wake them up. They were asleep. And we had done Kriyas HaTorah. We're up to Yizkor. So I knock on the door, and I tell them, listen, in case you want to get up and you want to join us, Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, this is when we have Yizkor. Maybe you want to get up and say Yizkor for your father, for Chaim. So he pauses a moment, and then he says, Rabbi, I would like to. Would you mind waiting a moment, and I'm going to come and say Yizkor? I said, sure, no problem. So a few minutes later, he comes out of the room. He's all dressed. He says, Rabbi, but I don't even have a tallis. I said, don't worry, I have a tallis for you. So I give him a tallis, and he puts it over his head, and he begins to sway back and forth. And I leave the room, because Baruch Hashem, both my parents are alive. Biz 120 years. Meanwhile, he's davening, and when he finishes Yizkor, he comes out of the room, and I see he's crying, and he gives me a big hug, and he says, Rabbi, I can't explain it. I just feel that my father wanted me to be here. He just wanted me to be here in this Simchas Torah. He wanted me to see what it was all about, what he went through, because I never did. I just felt like that's why I'm here. He guided me to be here. I said, Shalom, you don't know the half of it. I said, I want you to come with me. Let's look at the painting once again that I have of your father. And we went, and we looked over the stairwell, which is where we have the Chaim Goldberg painting. It's the largest painting in the house, and it's a painting of Simchas Torah in Kazimierz. We own the Simchas Torah painting. And that's what his father saw in Poland, that image with the Rabbanim standing at the bima, and the children waving the flag, and as just Nashim and the children on the shoulders of the Tatis. And yes, this is it. This is what your father saw. This is what happens when you begin to doubt, when you begin to have the haskalah, and you don't hang on, then all you're left with is pictures and paintings and pretty things to put on the wall. I'm happy to tell you, he's already reserved to come back to our home for this Pesach. Okay, that is the end. Thank you very much.